Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics Football. This is Fran here, and I'll be kind of looking at a very specific analysis at two teams today. And it's going to be between both Man City and Wolves. The first team I'll be looking at is going to be Man City. And of course, the running joke in the community is that, Pep Guardiola simply is someone who thinks of things on the fly, constantly likes to change his opinions on players, constantly likes to change tactics. But I do think there is still a way of navigating Pep Roulette, at least in terms of the short term. And I think you have to rely on his kind of Gameweek 2 press conference, which I know, of course, is hard because a lot of people do think that he is a bit of a fraud, a bit of a liar. But I think the basis where he mentioned that he will continue to play players who are in form and players who are performing is a strong one to actually look at, maybe within the short term for these kind of healthy Man City fixtures. Who are the best players to pick for Man City and who to move away from? And I think one thing to kind of look at right now with this current tactical style of Man City is to observe that they really like playing with one creative winger and one much more direct winger in the team. The clear starting combination right now is going to be Grealish and Jesus. And I think we've seen a clear move away from Mahrez in that sense. And I think Pep does like having Jesus. Jesus represents a winger who's much more direct, much more attacking, can also have a great whipped cross as well, and is someone, therefore, who plays much more off the ball. Whereas Grealish, on the other hand, is someone who plays a much more on the ball role, prefers to have the ball, likes to control the tempo of the game, and that's something that Pep Guardiola really enjoys for his team. You don't want every single player to have that because you can't just have ball dominant players in your team and have a side of 11 like that. But Grealish is someone who he definitely gives the authority and has the authority right now to control the ball and kind of have the game at his pace. And I think he is the more creative player on that side. So I think you can look at these two players as a clear pairing right now. Whereas the second priority is Sterling and Mahrez, who come off the bench and represent the exact same duo but on the opposite wings. Sterling is someone who's much more direct, can probably play off the ball a lot better than Mahrez, whereas Mahrez is someone who needs time on the ball, to create space and also to create separation from his defenders. He's much more technical in terms of his dribbling and prefers to not necessarily go straight into the box and kind of attack defenders in that sense, like Sterling does. He's someone who will probably look for finesse shots, deeper crosses, and things like that. So I think this is the clear attacking structure that he's gone for. The question, of course, is whether or not you can have faith that Grealish and Jesus will continue to start. And I do think that will be the basis, at least, for Game Week 4 and attacking maybe that Leicester fixture, especially at a time where Leicester seem to be a very, I think, weak side, especially with the fact that they have injuries. Ricardo Pereira just got injured. We don't know exactly the stat of his injury, but Marty as well has shown some sort of weaknesses. I know that they had a fantastic performance in the Community Shield, but we also know that Man City is the type of side that continues to build on form and really hit the ground running post international break. So I think it's a very unique time to attack them because a lot of people are still kind of scared of Man City players and playing with Pep Roulette and dealing with the fact that they have some tough fixtures. But I think Man City can navigate through those fixtures, and as we have seen already, they have clearly most of the players who actually hold. It's just about deciding when and where to actually get these players. I think right now in this structure, I think Jesus is probably the most interesting asset at 8.5. The only tricky thing with Jesus is the fact that he deals with um, some of the issues such as DCL being at a similar price point, being much more consistent and not being a rotation threat. Similar thing with Antonio and West Ham. When you look at Grealish, I think at an 8M price, he is kind of like a player who's in between a player like Son and then some of the cheaper players. Someone like Gray, someone like Benrahma, these players and even Rafinha are much cheaper than Grealish and much more nailed in the sense that they get to play a full 90 minutes per game. Whereas you can see Grealish, even if he might have had an effective game on paper, he could be subbed off at 80 minutes, and Pep would be happy with his performance, without any kind of returns. And that's one of the issues with Man City. So I think Grealish is probably one to avoid for now. And the reason why, to be honest, is just simply due to the fact that someone like Ferran Torres is available at 7 mil. You have basically a player that Pep Guardiola really enjoys as a centre forward. He provides something that's different to some of the players that he's tested and trialed at a false nine position. In my opinion, Sterling, Foden, and Kevin De Bruyne are all players who he has played, as a false nine, but I don't think it's really worked out as much as he had hoped for in the past. I personally prefer tactically Kevin De Bruyne a little bit deeper in the field because I just want him to have as much of the ball as he can get. And I think right now with Grealish a little bit more advanced, you have the opportunity to do that, right? You have an advanced player who can kind of have control the ball and someone a little bit deeper as well who can control the tempo of the game, if you're not fighting deep inside the opponent's box. And I think someone who can unlock the defenses is clearly Ferran Torres because he is more inclined to making these near post runs that they really lacked last season, and he shows some centre forward characteristics that some of the other players don't show in terms of running off the shoulder of defenders and making what Pep Guardiola claimed to be Vardy-esque run. So I think right off the bat, if you're wildcarding, Ferran Torres is probably the most interesting player to get from Man City. And for now, I think that's exactly how you navigate Pep Roulette. And that's kind of my Man City asset analysis, at least at this point in the season. When you look at the defenders for Man City, you're talking about Diaz, I think, being the most nailed player. But I think right now we also have the basis to say that Cancelo is probably the most aggressive differential option that you have who's at the same price. Cancelo has, I think, more priority over Walker at this point in the season. It seems like Pep Guardiola has given more faith to Cancelo to either play left back for full games or even right back for full games. We saw Walker get subbed off at 45 minutes for Arsenal. He was having a little bit of a poor game, even though it was 10 versus 11. And we saw, Cancelo have the license to play that full 90 minutes, whereas Zinchenko was given 45 minutes to actually get maybe a little bit of match fatigue out of his system. And so I think right now, if you actually want to attack Man City quite hard, Cancelo makes a lot of sense. But Diaz is clearly that safety net that you have. And Laporte as well is up there in terms of someone who, where Stones may be kind of being out of priority for now, Laporte is right there, who's able to kind of start games at 5.5 for Man City. I wouldn't really touch any of the other 5.5 players right now, especially due to the fact that we've seen that Pep is happy to tinker and sub people off at 45 minutes. But I think Cancelo, Laporte, and Diaz are the priority options at defense, and you should probably pick only one of them at this point in the season to avoid, the full ramifications of Pep Roulette. When we look at Wolves, I think this is a much simpler situation, and the question really is, what are you to benefit the most from in terms of the defense and the attack? I think when we look at the defense for Wolves, let's just kind of look at the stats. I think Cody, Marcel, and Kilman are all players who have started off the season together. They've played most of the minutes so far, unless Wolves choose to attack, whereas Cody has at times been subbed off so that Wolves can employ a more attacking style. But Marcel has been nailed, whereas a player that we looked at in the preseason, Ait Nouri, has not gotten any minutes so far in terms of the top Premier League fixture games. So I think Marcel is the most interesting option because he actually leads the league in terms of crossing. And when we're looking at the much easier fixtures that Wolves have, I think there's a clear template to say that when they're actually faced versus easier sides, a player like Marcel can be extremely effective. And I think he just has so much more value than Semedo, who, even though he does play in much more advanced positions, I don't think he's as clinical. And arguably, it's just worth that kind of 0.5 cost cutting that you can create with Marcel, especially since he has much better attacking returns than someone like Cody and someone like Kilman. And that's my verdict on Wolves' defense. I think you should only kind of look at someone like Marcel, to be honest. I think he's the most interesting asset there. Clear differential because he has really low ownership and probably the best option to have for the next fixtures, and given the fact that Wolves have a fantastic fixture swing ahead. In terms of the attack, I would honestly personally say that my initial verdict is don't touch any of the attackers right now. I think we're entering a stage of the league where even though Wolves have a fantastic fixture for Jimenez, you have to say that half the key chances have been gifted to Adama Traore. And we all know Adama Traore and what he represents as a player. He's clearly unclinical, someone who's not so disciplined and kind of organized in terms of the decision making inside the box. And I think on that basis, you can't just infer and say, he's going to have better decision making versus easier teams. Ultimately, if you're so wasteful over the course of your career, I don't think it's going to take a fantastic fixture swing to see where Adama Traore would start hauling consecutively. Because when you look at the quality of chances he's been getting versus Wolves versus Spurs, it doesn't matter what defense he's up against; those chances should have been buried. And the fact that he can't bury them means that he's not really worth it as an asset whatsoever. In terms of Jimenez, I think, as I mentioned in my cheat sheet video, there's a clear drop off in terms of his performance as a player. I think it's probably worth actually waiting for him to actually start scoring, maybe actually for him to actually regain his confidence as a player, because he's actually missed a whole full year of top flight football, and that does definitely affect a player a lot. The emotional game is something that we have to factor in when we look at assets, to be honest. Confidence is a big thing, and that's why we kind of move from trend to trend. And I think it's better to be late on this trend than to be early on this trend, and kind of hope that Wolves can get their form in order before we actually switch into someone like Jimenez. But that's my verdict for now. Definitely look at Marcel. Probably kind of wait and see and take that approach with the Wolves attack, and let's kind of play from that point forwards. But that's how I would navigate the Man City and the Wolves players for the fixture swing ahead. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys have a wonderful week.